video of our multi-video seller series, we shall look at contract negotiation. The seller has possibly had many buyer viewings at this point, and now one or more offers have come in on the home. So what happens now? This section is extremely important, as contract negotiation will determine not only how much money the seller is going to walk away with at closing, but also will determine how smooth the closing process will be. Contract negotiation is the process by which two or more parties come to a legally binding agreement on the terms and conditions of the house sale and purchase. The main goal of contract negotiation is for each party to be satisfied with the rights and obligations assigned to them and hence be ready to sign the contract. Here are 8 important facts about contract negotiation.
Number 1. Contract types. In the state of Florida, at the time of us making this video, the most commonly encountered contract is the as-is contract for sale and purchase. This contract does not obligate the seller to perform any repairs, but it does give the buyer the right to cancel within the inspection period at the buyer's sole discretion. The inspection period is usually no more than 15 calendar days. The standard contract for sale and purchase at this time is infrequently used. It stipulates a maximum repair amount that the seller is committed to spending. This amount will go towards rectifying any issues raised in the general home inspection and in the wood destroying organisms or WDO inspection. It also goes towards rectifying any permitting issues if any should exist. Offers are normally accompanied by either proof of funds to close for an all-cash offer or a lender approval letter in the case of a financed buyer.
Number 2. Contract content. Both contracts are very comprehensive, and if signed off by the buyer and seller, will be used as reference throughout the transaction. As well as writing in the name of the buyer and the seller and the property address, the buyer's agent will outline the offer price and whether the buyer is purchasing using cash or financing. If the buyer is using financing, the amount of the down payment and the loan type will be added to the contract. The buyer's agent will also write a response date by which the seller must answer or the offer is considered withdrawn. The contract will also include a closing date, the amount of the escrow deposit and where it is to be held, the appliances conveying and whether any personal items are included or excluded. Additional items will include the length of the inspection period, how assessments are to be handled, who will select the closing agent, whether any additional addenda are included, and there is also a section for any additional remarks should any be pertinent to the offer.
Number 3. Counter offer. The seller does not need to only either accept or reject an offer. The seller may choose instead to counter certain terms of the offer. As well as countering the price, the seller may counter any other aspect of the offer which the seller would like to see altered. Normally, the buyer will then be given a deadline by which to respond to the counteroffer, or it will be considered withdrawn. Negotiating will continue between buyer and seller through their respective agents until either an impasse or a meeting of the minds is reached. If a meeting of the minds is reached, then the contract is signed off on by all parties. The transaction then begins its journey towards the closing.
Number 4. Firming up the contract. The time of the negotiation is used by the listing agent to not only secure the highest price possible for the seller by perhaps playing one offer against another, but also to try to firm up the contract for the seller to make sure that the contract will stand the best possible chance of making it to the closing day. If the buyer is financing the purchase, then the listing agent will reach out to the buyer's lender to discuss the solidity of the buyer's financing and his ability to close on the transaction at the proposed price and within the proposed time frame. If the listing agent has concerns about any other aspects of the offer, for example, whether the appraisal will bring in the purchase price on a financed offer, then they may make a recommendation that the seller asks that the buyer remove the appraisal contingency, if not entirely, then at least to a certain degree. Shortening buyer inspection timeframes is also another way to strengthen an offer. Should a buyer not be satisfied with the home inspection outcome, it's better that information be learned sooner rather than later.
Number 5. Seller concessions. In a buyer's market where there is a surplus of available inventory, a buyer may be able to request that the seller contribute towards the buyer's closing costs. The maximum amount that a buyer can request as a contribution will depend on the buyer's loan type, as lenders have stipulations as to the contribution amounts. At the time of making this video, the maximum amount permissible varies from 3% to 9%, again, depending on the loan type. In a seller's market, it is unusual for a seller to agree to a contribution as, with many offers on the table, the seller can readily find an offer that is not requesting a contribution of this type.
Number 6. Other stipulations. A contract may sometimes contain stipulations in the additional remarks section. For example, if the roof of the home is past its useful life, the buyer may stipulate that the seller replaces the roof before the closing date, or perhaps that the seller credits the buyer a certain amount towards a roof replacement. The same may apply for a flooring replacement or a credit towards new flooring. On a short-term rental vacation home, there may be a stipulation that future bookings will be honoured by the buyer.
Number 7. Contract addenda. It is quite usual for an offer contract to have several addenda. For example, if the home is in a community which has a homeowners association, then the contract will have an HOA addendum. If the buyer is buying using one of the government loans, VA or FHA, then the contract will have a corresponding addendum disclosing this fact. Other addenda frequently encountered are an appraisal contingency addendum and a sale of buyer's own home contingency addendum. All addenda that are marked as being added to the main contract must be signed and/or initialed by both the buyer and the seller for there to be a contract in effect.
Number 8. Multiple offers. The most common and most practical way of dealing with multiple offers is for the seller to instruct his or her agent to go back to all the agents for the offering buyers and have them ask the buyers if this is the buyer's highest and best offer. The highest obviously relates to price, but what is the meaning of best and how can a buyer better his or her offer? An offer can be made better by, for example, making the closing date more appealing to the seller if the seller wants a quicker close, shortening the inspection period, or removing an appraisal contingency if the buyer is purchasing using financing. Once these improved offers have been received, the seller can proceed to accept an offer so long as one is to his or her satisfaction.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to check out the rest of the videos in this seller series.